Hey there, Horse Center fans. We're just a little over 7 weeks out from the first Saturday in May, and Matt and I have a big show for you today.
We surely do, Brian. It's been quite a week already, and we haven't even gotten to the big races of the weekend.
That's true. A lot of big news. Matt and I are going to talk about it. We're also going to talk about our new Kentucky Derby top 10s, and we're going to preview the big $1 Million Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn Park. And Matt, please don't call me Shirley. Watch it all right now on Horse Center. Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the special pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I am good, Brian. I am certainly a different racing fan than I was over the weekend.
Yeah, well, big news. Of course, Matt's alluding to the news that came in Monday morning when 27 people connected to horse racing, including some big name trainers. Jason Service, trainer of Maximum Security, Jorge Navarro, him of many good horses of recent years, were two of the 27 indicted by the feds. Matt, illegal doping of horses now. You say it's a different world for horse racing, and I completely agree. But on the other hand, I wasn't necessarily shocked what the feds were able to do.
No, that's for sure. I don't think anybody that follows racing carefully, particularly in the Northeast, and puts down a wager or two, was surprised about the names Jason Service and Jorge Navarro coming up atop this doping scandal with their through-the-roof winning percentages and their percentages at which they improve horses after the claim. Everybody wondered, how the heck can they do that? How can they train at percentages better than Hall of Famers? And I guess we got an answer, Brian.
We sure did, Matt. I'm optimistic and pessimistic here with a few things. First, I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful that this changes racing for the better. I mean, we've known that there are cheaters out there. We didn't know the complicity. We didn't know the collaboration of these two pretty big name trainers. And reading through the indictment was nothing short of disgusting. XY Jet was a horse that so many people liked, a valiant sprinter, a talented sprinter who had a heart attack not that long ago, trained by Jorge Navarro. You have to wonder how much of what he went through being in the Navarro regimen had to do with that heart attack. It's hard to imagine that it didn't have something to do with us losing XY Jet. Maximum Security, man. Maximum Security is certainly the top dirt horse in the world now after winning the Kentucky Derby before being taken down, but big wins in the Haskell Cigar Mile, and more recently, of course, winning the world's richest race, the Saudi Cup. He could lose a championship. It's never happened, but we're in unprecedented waters. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you another thing, Matt. I'm pessimistic that this is, I don't want to call it the tip of the iceberg, but I don't think this is the end of arrests or indictments. Service and Navarro were two guys, I think, that played it a little bit too overtly, if you will, too obviously, and the rumors about those two were out there, but I think there might be more to come.
Oh, I think there'll certainly be more to come. That's how these things work, Brian, when there's a list of 27 people that were indicted, and some of them know an awful lot about an awful lot of trainers. No doubt there will be deals made, and no doubt there will be names that come pouring out of some of these people as they hope to keep themselves out of jail. As for Mr. Navarro, he was blazing on many occasions in terms of what he did. The video that was out not that long ago, I personally heard him, stood 5 or 6 feet away from him at Monmouth Park as he spoke disrespectfully about horses that he had just raced on the track at Monmouth Park and what was going to happen to them. I stood right there, and he was oblivious to the fact that somebody was listening to what he said. And Jason Service is somebody I've gotten to know a little bit from my coverage at Horse Racing Nation. I stood right next to him in a paddock after somebody asked him when he was on a particular hot streak about that hot streak, and he was angry and vehemently denied and didn't appreciate that kind of question. Well, you know what? Right now, that bothers me to know. I can't describe, that I stood next to somebody and they lied to me, and I was able to go up to Service before races and ask him how his horses were doing, and he would tell me, so it's amazing that this kind of thing was going on, but not a surprise, and I think there's going to be a lot more coming.
Yeah, and that's sad in its own right that it's not a surprise, and horse racing let it go on as long as it did. I think these cheaters, there are cheaters out there. These are two cheaters. They'll have their day in court, but from what we know and from the information provided in that indictment, certainly does not look good in any shape or form for these two trainers. They are certainly looking at some prison time. And frankly, I'm happy about that. We need to do more than just a slap on the wrist in horse racing. And, Matt, the illegal substances are always probably going to be ahead of the testing, especially the testing in horse racing, which isn't nearly as in-depth as Major League Baseball or the NFL. So I think we need to take other steps and other steps at looking at guys that just all of a sudden, out of the blue, turn claimers into much better horses, and their winning percentages are out of the norm, out of this scale of reasonability. And certainly these two were two that were pretty clear cut in that. What about Maximum Security, Matt? We were two of the people that took him off our top 10. It's hard to blame the horse. Of course, we're not blaming the horse, but on the other hand, we have no idea what Maximum Security would have accomplished if he wasn't in the barn of Jason Service.
Yeah, we don't, Brian. And I can only think back to the fact that we were all amazed how this one-time $16,000 claimer turned into a graded stakes winner. Well, maybe we understand a little bit more right now about why he was a $16,000 claimer at some point. And would he have advanced far beyond that level were it not for all of the drugs that were pumped into him?
Well, I am going to say this about Maximum Security, and I'm not defending Jason's service certainly in any way, but I will defend Maximum Security in this one small point, and that is that was a debut performance of maiden 16 claimer, and we have seen horses placed in maiden claiming who never should have been in claiming races. So there is the possibility that Maximum Security was never meant to be a claimer, even before performance enhancing drugs were given to him. But who knows? And it's hard to know what's going to happen to Maximum Security's record. And he's going to Bob Baffert now, and we don't know if he'll ever race again. But very unprecedented, Matt, and it's a shame. But on the other hand, I also think it's a good step for horse racing. How about we talk about a better subject now, and we get into our Kentucky Derby top 10s? You ready for that?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, we're going to count down. We're going to count backwards from 10 to 1, Matt. I'll let you go first. I think you have a Bob Baffert trainee as your number 10.
I do, and I must say, in advance of us going through these top 10s, it was a tough top 10 for me to make, Brian. The 3-year-olds right now, they're not running in very many races. So beyond the top 5 or 6 in my top 10, I was struggling a little bit to fill out the 10. But anyway, when in doubt, Brian, let's go with Bob Baffert. His Derby success recently is almost unprecedented. So I went with one of his newcomers. I put Charlatan, his latest debut flash, at the number 10 position.
Okay, number 10 on the list. Certainly it was an impressive debut performance. 6 furlongs now is all he has under his belt, and we're in March. I said the same or very similar thing about Justify a few years ago, so I'm just not ready to put him in my top 10 after that 6 furlong race, but he certainly was impressive. My number 10 is more of a dark horse, if you will. Granted, he was my long shot pick in one of the divisions of the Risen Star, but I thought he ran very well. I'm talking about Major Fed, horse really bred for a distance, the son of Go Zapper. I thought ran a good race in the Risen Star to be second that day. It was only his 3rd career start, Matt, and I expect him to get better, and I think he can handle classic distances. So we'll see as he goes closer. I believe he'll be in the Louisiana Derby next. Who's your number 9? Sure.
My number 9, also expected to head to the Louisiana Derby, is Enforceable from the Mark Casse barn. We remember that he won the Lecomte on the Louisiana road to the Kentucky Derby, was second in the Risen Star, another horse that, like you said, I feel will be able to handle the classic distance of the Kentucky Derby, as Mark Casse goes for the wraparound Triple Crown, meaning that last year he won the Preakness, he won the Belmont, and now he's going for the Kentucky Derby.
The old wraparound. All right, I like it. Yeah, and Enforceable is a horse I had a hard time keeping off my top 10, but I wanted to get a few others in there. Enforceable certainly looks like a horse who can win both the Louisiana Derby and make some noise in the Triple Crown for trainer Mark Casse. My number 9, Matt, is a horse I don't expect will be in my top 10 for too long. That might be a strange thing to say, but King Guillermo was so impressive. The son of Uncle Mo, coming off turf, coming off a layoff, to win that Tampa Bay Derby. There's nothing about his performance in the Tampa Bay Derby that tells me he shouldn't be included in the top 10. Of course, he was a huge long shot, but the real reason I don't think he'll be in my top 10 very long is because now his next race is the Kentucky Derby, and I don't think that's a good sign.
No, that probably isn't a good sign. And I agree with you. I thought about including King Guillermo in my top 10 also. That was a big performance right out of the gate, earned a big speed figure. But yeah, to me, it's not the kind of race that is going to be easy to repeat, particularly from a 49-1 shot, who now is saying that they're going to train up to the 10 furlong Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, and of course he's never been farther than a mile and a 16th. Hey, Matt, who's your number 8?
My number 8 is, when in doubt, go with Bob Baffert.
Not Baffert again.
Bob Baffert again. I'm putting 8 rings in there, and I'm putting 8 rings in because there was a chance, a little bit of talk, that he might go in the Rebel, but he's been training lights out for Baffert, a 6 furlong workout recently that was impressive, then a 7 furlong workout that was impressive, meaning that Baffert's serious about getting this one going on the Derby Trail. It's getting late. I'm not quite sure when the heck that's going to be, Brian, or what kind of options are left. There aren't a lot of them left, but 8 rings was a pretty good 2-year-old. Impressive debut, then losing the rider in the Del Mar Futurity, then winning the American Pharaoh, and ended the year with a tired performance in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He could come back as any kind.
I don't like it, man. I don't like it. He hasn't run this year, and I didn't like him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I don't think you did either as one of the favorites, so I'm not ready to put him on the Derby top 10 without even a race this year. But he is Bob Baffert. All right, number 8 for me is Gouverneur Morris. And how about Todd Pletcher, Matt? How about Todd Pletcher? This is Todd Pletcher's top horse for the Derby right now, I think. Constitution is the sire of a lot of good young horses. Gouverneur Morris might be one of the most interesting of the Constitutions, although there'll be more Constitution talk to come on this top 10. But I thought Gouverneur Morris ran a very good allowance race in his return. He was second integrated stakes in his second start ever. So he's 2 for 3 lifetime. And the horse he beat in that allowance, Untitled, ran a pretty darn good race in the Gotham. So I think Gouverneur Morris is a horse to watch out for in his next start, especially, and he deserves a spot in the top 10.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have Gouverneur Morris in my top 10 also, a couple slots higher. And I agree, Brian, with the assessment that this is right now Todd Pletcher's top Derby threat.
All right. Who's your number 7?
My number 7 is Wells Bayou, and I expected to be talking about this horse when we do the Rebel Stakes preview, but for some reason at the last minute, he was not a final entry into the race by Brad Cox. I don't know. I did not, since the entries only came out just an hour or so ago, I didn't hear any kind of story at this point as to why. I don't know, maybe he was scared away by the Baffert horse in there and is looking for a different spot. But I really liked what I saw from Wells Bayou in Southwest when he set the pace and ran second and really had the look of a horse that has the potential to develop into a good one.
Yeah, I liked what I saw too from him last time. That was at Oaklawn Park, I guess. The thing about him for me on the list, though, is I don't have Silver Prospector on the list, so it was hard for me to put Wells Bayou. He was a bit of a long shot there in his last start, but I too see a lot of potential there in Wells Bayou, so certainly an interesting dark horse. My number 7 is Ete Indian, a son of Summerfront, who really, really flattered Tis the Law because Ete Indian was second. The only horse remotely back in the Holy Bull, and then Ete Indian had no horse close to him in the Fountain of Youth. So those two recent starts for Ete Indian show me he's moving in the right direction. He's really taken in his transition from turf to dirt, and he looks like the type of speed horse that might be able to carry his speed for a ways. I like Ete Indian.
Yeah, Brian, I hear what you're saying, but I couldn't include him in my top 10. He does, that race does not look like the kind of race that is going to be easily repeated.
Okay, fair enough. Number 6 on my list is not the same as your number 6. Who is your number 6? I think we already talked about him.
Yeah, my number 6 is Gouverneur Morris, and my number 5 is the same as your number 6.
Okay, so my number 6, your number 5, and he's running out of time quickly. But I like him. I like him a lot. Street Sense won the Kentucky Derby, I don't know, about 13 years ago, impressively, with a strong closing kick under Calvin Burrell. I could see Max Field being just that kind of horse, too, from what he did last year as a 2-year-old, the way he looked in his workouts. I think Max Field is the real deal for trainer Brendan Walsh. But we know he had a chip removed. He had surgery, minor surgery, but it takes a while. He's had some decent works. He's had 4 workouts now at the time of this taping. So hopefully a start is in the works soon. It's getting late quickly though for Maxfield. 1 prep, get some points, get some experience this year, and then the Kentucky Derby. I don't know. That seems tough. Maybe too tough to ask from such a talented horse. But he deserves a spot on his class alone.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He deserves a spot. 4 workouts. Last one was up to 5 furlongs. So now he's starting to put the endurance into the horse. Also, he deserves a spot in the race. He's going to have to get over. We've said that about a bunch of horses, waiting for them to come back, and they haven't panned out. So we know it's not an easy thing to do, but with the way things are shaping up, if he's got anything good, he's a threat.
Yeah, I'm thinking Bluegrass because, of course, he won the Breeders' Futurity so well at Keeneland last year. I'm just not sure if the experience of only the Bluegrass this year would be enough for the first Saturday in May. We shall see. Number 5 on my list, Matt, is no, I'm going to throw some tennis out there. It's not Djokovic, it's not Federer, it's Nadal. Nadal is a son of blame, Matt, and he's running in the Rebel. I think this horse wants to run a distance. Not everybody agrees with me after the 44 and change he threw down last time in the San Vicente, but I think he stayed on really well considering how fast it was run early. I think the son of blame wants to go a distance. I think he's going to win the Rebel. Oops, I'm giving away some of my Rebel preview information. But I like Nadal so much so that I think number 5 will probably be too low in a few days.
I have him at number 3 on mine, Brian, and I agree when you said son of blame. That's a good thing for getting the distance. Won at 6 furlongs. The San Vicente was 7 furlongs. He's 2 for 2 in his career and coming on the Rebel Stakes. And we'll talk more about that race shortly, but I like Nadal also.
Okay, so he's your number 3. Who's your number 4?
My number 4 is your number 3. I think we're pretty similar the rest of the way up. And that's Honor AP, who came back in the San Felipe. Off of a pretty long rest, off of some minor hiccups here and there, and ran a pretty good race against a pretty good field to run second to Bob Baffert's maybe Top Gun in Authentic.
Yeah, Honor AP. Boy, there's a lot to like here. I have him at number 3. I haven't done my number 4, but I want to talk about your number 4 first. Honor AP. If you put a gun to my head now, and I know you never would, but if you did, ask me who's your Kentucky Derby horse as of today, I think it would be Honor AP. And maybe I'm being a little stubborn or a little flattering myself because this is a horse I wrote about before he ever won a race. Now the bad news is he's only won one race, and it's not a stakes race. The good news is his return race was so good. A mile 16th against a loose on the lead for all intents and purposes. Authentic was loose on the lead in the San Felipe. Honor AP was on the rail. He moved out nicely. He made that nice middle move that I want to see in the Kentucky Derby. And yeah, he couldn't catch Authentic on that track after what was done the first 7 furlongs of that race. But I thought it was just a wonderful stakes debut. I thought it was a wonderful return to the races. He's bred to get a distance. He's in the hands of John Sheriffs, who I think really, as much as any trainer in the United States, trains his horses to be distance horses. I think a lot of Honor AP. I just couldn't put him higher than 3 because he hasn't completely proven it yet. Going backwards, though, my number 4, Matt, is Sole Volante. I always struggle to say that horse's name. Sole Volante, the son of Caracantai, was second, a disappointing second in the Tampa Bay Derby. But I'll tell you what, I liked what I saw in the Tampa Bay Derby. He really weaved his way through. He really passed a lot of horses, and that's what he's going to need to do in the Kentucky Derby. I haven't seen a horse rally any better than him, and he's done it now a few times. Sole Volante is my number 4.
Yeah, that's a reasonable description in there. Brian got smoked by that runaway freak performance of King Guillermo in the Tampa Bay Derby, so I can see why you included him in your top 10, but I'm sorry I couldn't include him for trainer Patrick Biancone.
Okay, number 3 on my list was Honor AP. Number 3 on your list was Nadal. So we're already up to number 2, Matt. Why don't you break the suspense and tell us who you have at number 2?
I've got Authentic, who we talked about briefly just before, as my number 2. He's 3 for 3 now for Baffert after winning the San Felipe and doing everything that he needed to do in that race at Santa Anita.
Yeah. Who knows how good Authentic is? There's a few things I saw in his races that I just don't love, or tells my eye that 1.25 miles is going to be a little tough for him, but you have to have him pretty high on the list. He's been so impressive, all 3 starts, but especially the Sham and then the San Felipe. I like the race that Honor AP ran behind him as we move forward. But for now, Authentic is awfully good, undefeated. I had to put him at number 2 as well. Matt, I think that only leaves one horse, and it looks like we're in agreement on this one.
Yep, it's Tis the Law at number 1 with 22 points. So he needs to have a good race in the Florida Derby coming up, which is slated to be his next start. He needs to finish in the top 2 for sure, maybe top 3 to get into the Derby. His race in the Holy Bull was really good. He's been flattered by lots of results and lots of horses that he's beaten. I'll be honest with you, Brian, you know that I've really liked this horse, but I sure wish he was going to have another race between the Holy Bull and the Florida Derby.
Yeah, and that's racing nowadays, Matt. The amount of preps has dwindled over the years, but Tis the Law has done nothing wrong. He was so impressive winning the Champagne last year. He didn't overcome a little bit of there were some circumstances in his loss as a 2-year-old in the Kentucky Jockey Club where he was boxed in for a good chunk of it. It was on an off track, but he still ran pretty well that day in defeat. The Holy Bull was so impressive, and then you see Ete Indian come back and do that in the Fountain of Youth, which we really did. There's no way to put it. Tis the Law almost toyed with him in the Holy Bull, so I have no choice but to put Tis the Law 1. And to tell you the truth, I do like Tis the Law better than Authentic of the 2 current favorites right now. We talked about it already. Barclay Tagg, Sakatoga Stable. They became famous with a New York bred years ago named Bunnyside, and they got another really good New York bred here in Tis the Law. Florida Derby is in 2 weeks, folks, and it should be a good field, so that'll be a good test for Tis the Law as he stretches out to 9 furlongs. All right, Matt, there's one big Derby prep this weekend, one real big one, and it's $1 million one, and we've seen a lot of horses go on from the Rebel to do big things, starting way back in 1980, Matt, with Temperance Hill winning the Rebel and then going on to win the Belmont, among other things. My 16th, Saturday's card at Oaklawn Park. We're going to start on the rail because I think we need to start at the rail with Bob Baffert's Nadal.
Yep, $1 million race. This is, Brian, that's attracted a field of 8. A couple of them seem to have been last-minute additions to fill the field out a little bit. But, yeah, Baffert seems to draw the rail often enough, and he's got it again here with Nadal. But I don't think that that's going to make much of a difference. We've got him at 9 to 5 on the morning line. Could very well be less than this, and I think it would be a big surprise if this Baffert runner doesn't end up 4 for 4 after the Rebel.
Yeah, Nadal is he's only 2 for 2, Matt. So 4 for 4.
Sorry.
4 for 4 would be a surprise. I already talked about him. I like him in the spot. I think the rail is no worries because he's got speed, but I think he can either take the lead or sit off a horse if he needs to. Sorry, I'm on the chalk in this one, folks, but I'm on the chalk in this one, Nadal. Number 2, Matt, is Accession. Asmussen has a few horses in here, but this is not one I like. He's had so many chances already.
Yeah, I think maybe he was liked a little bit more, but his last 2 races on the Louisiana Derby Trail and the Lecomte and Risen Star were just uncompetitive, and he's only got a maiden special weight victory to his credit.
What about the son of Liam's map? Basin was just an overpowering winner of the Hopeful, Matt, but that was over 6 months ago. This is his first start since winning the Grade 1 Hopeful.
Yeah, I think if you had asked trainer Steve Asmussen in the summer who his best 2-year-old was, I think he probably would say Basin. And he might say right now that his best 3-year-old is Basin. But again, so much to do after 6 months off Brian. He's got to go 2 turns for the first time. But hey, he beat some pretty good horses in his maiden victory. He beat 3 Technique. He beat some good horses in the Hopeful. But like we said, it isn't easy, and we haven't seen many horses do it, come back from 2 to 3 after this kind of layoff, but probably going to be the second choice.
Yeah, and recent history, Matt, we haven't seen a lot of horses kind of win stakes races at Saratoga and then turn that into real success at 3. So, what does that mean for Basin? I don't know. But the fact is he's been away for over 6 months. He's never done anything that's sprint. I think the fact that he's in the Rebel alone tells us that Asmussen thinks highly of him. But I just can't get on him as the second choice, maybe, or worse, the third choice in here after that kind of layoff and the negatives that we're talking about. Number 4, it might be a more likely runner to run well. Don't get me wrong, Basin could very well run well, but I could see him also throwing in a bit of a clunker. Silver Prospector looks like a professional horse. He's got more experience than just about anybody on the Derby Trail. Neither one of us, we might be in the minority of not having him in our top 10s right now, but he's got 2 of his last 3 races were nice professional wins over some good horses.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in my top 10, Brian, because I just don't see him as a Kentucky Derby winner. But you can't deny his record, his experience with 8 starts, with over $700,000 in the bank, with 3 victories that got 2 of them got him Derby points. One of them in the Kentucky Jockey Club, and then he had a little bit of a step backwards when he ran 4th in the Smarty Jones, but maybe he didn't like that muddy surface. Came back with a really nice win in a big Southwest field. So, hey, he's a competitor. He knows where the finish line is, and except for that Smarty Jones as of late, he's right there at the end of the race. So wouldn't be surprised if this is the Steve Asmussen horse who runs second in here.
Yeah. I guess we're both talking Nadal, but I think Silver Prospector is a must-use in the exotics, and I do like him the best of the Asmussens as well, and I think a mile 16th might wind up being a much better distance for him than a mile and a quarter. Number 5, Matt, is a very interesting horse. Tom Amoss trains the Son of Violence, no parole. If you look at the past performances on this one, Matt, he is just steamrolling his competition. There's one caveat, of course, to that. Those are all Louisiana breds.
Yeah, nothing but ones in his running lines, Brian. Likes to get on the lead. Speedy horse. But yes, 3 for 3. All those races were against state breds, were against Louisiana breds. But Tom Amoss is a very good trainer. I don't care. Making the step up from winning a stake at Delta Downs to facing these Asmussen and Baffert type horses, that's a big step up.
A big step up, Matt, but I think he's for real. His races were so impressive that I think he's for real, but I don't really like him in this race. I think it's too much of a step up, and I think the fact that he's the speed with Nadal breathing down his neck or vice versa, I think that's a bad spot for him, a bad spot to try really good horses. I think we'll be hearing more about no parole, but I think on this one he can't quite withstand the pressure down the stretch. Number 6 is a horse who I think very well could be coming on late in this race. That's 3 Technique, Matt, and Bill Parcells, coach of the Giants, Super Bowl multiple winning coach of the Super Bowl Giants, might have a horse in the Kentucky Derby. That is.
Yeah, that's for sure, Brian. 3 Technique, well liked by a lot of people. Kind of horse who really hasn't run any bad races in his career. He was second in the Smarty Jones, and he was second in the Hopeful. He's got some Derby points already. Needs some more. So he needs to make a step up, and this is not an easy spot when we talk about that he's got to beat the likes of Nadal in here and even Silver Prospector.
I like him. Son of Mr. Speaker, I've liked him all along. I've been watching him since early on, even when Basin beat him back in the day. I think this race sets up for him a little bit. I think he's better than he showed in his only previous race as a 3-year-old. But I think that race did him some good on a money track. And now I think he's had a little bit of time off between races. I think they got a horse who's ready to move forward. So he's going to slightly be my second choice. I like him, and the odds are right too. I think he might be the 5th choice in here. He'll be the horse I played to just outdo Silver Prospector in the 2 spot. Number 7, Matt, is a recent maiden winner, Coach Bahi. I don't know much about him. I saw that he won a maiden in his 3rd start. I can't recommend him here, though.
No, likely to be the long shot in the race. Recent maiden winner. First 2 races were turf races. This was a race that came off the turf and was on an off track, so tough to recommend.
Yeah, number 8 is a horse who might have some odds in here, Matt. I have him listed as the 6th choice. That's American Theorem. Just like Basin, he's been away not quite as long, but almost 6 months since he ran second, a well-beaten second to 8 rings back in the American Pharaoh. He himself is a son of American Pharaoh, and unlike Basin, at least he's been 2 turns. So if you're looking for a horse with some odds, maybe this horse can step up.
Yeah, and like you said, Brian, he did show some promise out in California as a 2-year-old, but it's the 6-month layoff.
Exactly. All right, that's our Rebel preview. I'm going to Dial over 3 Technique and Silver Prospector. Matt, do you have anything more?
I'm going to Dial over Silver Prospector.
Okay, fair enough. All right, folks, we covered a lot on this show, from the Kentucky Derby and the big prep at Oaklawn Park, to the bad and the ongoing doping scandal. Matt and I are going to be following that as you will. As I'm sure there's more to unfold in the coming weeks and months. Hopefully, horse racing is a better place after this mess gets cleaned up a little bit, and I'm glad that it is getting messed by an outside entity, and that entity is the American government. Matt, how about a closing shot from you?
Yeah, and I agree with that, Brian. And horse racing is not unique to this in the sports world. Baseball, between the sign stealing scandal recently and performance enhancing drugs with home run hitters. That's our American pastime. There's always bad apples that are trying to take advantage of the system. On a more positive note, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman, for his great work putting together HorseCenter.
Thanks to Brett, and thanks to all you out there watching. We appreciate you watching every week here on HorseCenter. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, go ahead and do that now. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, the best contest site out there. That's Derby Wars. Folks, next week we will be talking Louisiana Derby down Big Easy Way, Matt, next week. That's our big prep for a week from now. Matt and I will be back right here on HorseCenter.